I mean, your biological mother that brought you there?
Yes.
Was she there too?
No. She was not there when it happened.
She brought you there, and then just left?
Yes. Or if there was a television in the rapist's house, she would sit and watch the series La Flor de l'Amour, or drink a coffee, things like that.
Annemasse, a French town on Lake Geneva. This is where Deborah grows up. This is where her biological mother sells Deborah to men. Literally sells her off. We drive to where the rapist lives. His name is Yannick Lamuzel. The retired elementary school teacher is sentenced to 5 years in prison. Deborah's biological mother goes to jail for 6 months. My colleague, Laurence Benoit, interviews Deborah, who is now 15 years old, for hours on end. In this documentary, we have to limit ourselves to only a few excerpts from it.
We thought it was our fault.
Why?
We thought we did something bad.
You thought it was a punishment?
Yes.
This is not the first time that we hear of such guilt. The abused children are put into a state of anxiety that silences them, a method that the perpetrators consciously practice to protect themselves. Our research leads us to another case. Robert. We changed the boy's name for safety reasons. He is 4 years old when he is sexually abused for the first time. Robert lives with his mother François in an undisclosed place. Many months pass before the 9-year-old can talk about what was done to him.
Is there something you really want to say?
That my father should go to jail.
Why do you want him to go to prison?
Because he treated me very badly.
If he were in prison, what would that change for you?
I would be free. I could see my grandma, my room. Without him beating me. Without him being mean to me. Robert says his father raped him often. Despite numerous testimonies and medical reports, this case does not come to trial. The judiciary does not believe the child's statements. We find the following protocol of a psychologist in the dossier of Robert, who today is 9 years old.
I sensed Robert's suffering while talking about it. Robert told me that they put so-called corks in his butt. Also, that they hurt his penis. I asked him how, and he answered that they had pulled him on his penis. Robert said that he was injected with a purple-looking liquid. I asked him who he was with. He answered, with his father. And, that there were other men with him.
Robert recognizes this house again. In Nomoncoeur near Paris. Here, his father and the other men are said to have smuggled in numerous children through the garage.
If you had to go back to your father, what would you do? Would you flee?
Yes, I would escape.
Even alone?
Yes, I would try it anyway.
You're right. I can understand that. Because it was so bad.
No, I just don't want to go back to him.
What do you think he would do to you if you went back?
The evil would start again.
Does he hurt you a lot?
Yes. The interview took place under difficult conditions. Robert lives hidden. We had to be very careful, and just wait for days, and behave very discreetly. It took a very long time until we were able to talk, until the situation was appropriate, and the little one was reasonably comfortable. We wanted Robert to feel safe and by no means afraid. Robert is at an undisclosed place in southern France known to us. The judiciary deprived his father of visiting rights during the investigation. After the procedure was finished, however, it was reassigned to him. Robert's mother, Françoise, has no choice but to hide her son.
Honestly, I never imagined that anything so bad could ever happen to my own son. I have ignored the problem pedophilia, as most people do. I think you must have lived it, to understand what that is. What pedophilia means. Robert started to talk about things. He said, "I'm sick of going to Dad. I do not want to see him anymore, he is evil." When I heard the word evil from Robert, I thought his father was treating him badly. What's also terrible and unbelievable about the story is that he also talked about evenings when the adults met and dressed up, with long coats and masks. And what really shocked me about his words, my little one said, "Dad disguised himself," but I immediately recognized his voice. And, Robert also spoke of animal sacrifices, but also of children. He depicted many things through mimicking.
He said that children were sacrificed.
He did not use the words "children sacrificed." He said they drew them blood and buried them.
Like many other victims, Robert also reported about the cameras. We find his photos on N24 CD-ROMs. Photos in which Françoise can clearly identify her son. But even that did not convince the judiciary to start a trial. Both in the case of Robert, as well as in the case of Deborah, it becomes clear that we are dealing with a network. A network that exploits children commercially. They are used to satisfy the perverted desires of pedophiles. With pornographic films, erotic photos, and sexual acts with children. Ultimately everything came together. Children that we found on the CD-ROMs recognized each other again. They describe the same things. In part, they identify the same people, although they have never met. Deborah, who never left Annemasse, recognizes Robert on the CD-ROM, who lives in Paris. The two have never seen each other before, but still know each other, and describe the same culprits. Robert is from Paris, Deborah from Annemasse near Geneva. They have never met, and yet they know each other. Wherever our research leads us, the children's statements overlap. For months we listen and trace their stories. Our material seems never-ending. Deborah's stepmother Fabienne also doesn't believe that her daughter was sexually abused. Not until a similar case becomes known at Deborah's school, does she become suspicious and begins to ask questions.
Deborah was always sad. She had stomach problems, often had headaches, and cried all the time. One time, she couldn't talk for a week. Another time, she couldn't walk. She was not a happy child at all. People told me, Deborah feels bad because I'm not her birth mother. That hurt me a lot. I raised her just like I did my other children and tried very hard to help her. But I simply could not find an explanation for her strange behavior. Today I know the cause.
We're on the way to Saint-Trier on Lake Geneva. Nearby is a building, which Deborah, now 15, calls the greenhouse. According to her statements, the children were not only abused here, she tells us there were satanic ceremonies.
So, there was a table, and there were candles.
What candles?
Just candles.
And where were they? Were they everywhere?
Well, there was this table, and the candles were set up all around it.
Were there people there?
My rapists.
You said, they put one of the two children who was also there, on the table? Did they all do something, or was it just one?
It was only one.
Was it always the same one?
Yes.
Can you say what happened without giving details?
Well, they sawed the child.
They sawed a child?
They sawed off parts of his body.
With what?
With an electric knife.
Did they saw him while he was still alive?
Yes.
And then they killed him?
No. They let him suffer.
But the child died anyway?
Yes.
Deborah tells us in our interviews of the murdering of small children. A new, unexpected dimension in this abuse case. Also a surprise for her stepmother Fabian.
Deborah felt numb when she saw all the murders of the children. But now that she can speak, she hopes to help all the children who are still going through it.
They cut off a finger?
A foot, and things like that.
They cut off a foot, and let the child die?
Yes. And during that, they also raped it.
So, he raped the child, and the others stood and watched?
Yes.
The abuse of small children is sad reality. The revenue of child molesters is estimated at €300 billion worldwide. Of that, about 1 billion in Germany alone. Deborah's and Robert's testimony, their description of children being murdered, and in Deborah's case, in front of a camera, is what is called a snuff film. A snuff video is a movie in which a child is killed after being tortured or sexually abused, until it eventually dies. That's what a snuff film is. For whom it is intended, I do not know. I mean, I've never owned one, and that's not my wish for God's sake. But what you need to know, and what is very important, these films are the driving force behind a parallel existing market, that obviously works well, thanks to a very rich audience. The people who can buy such a so-called program, are very rich people. All we have to do now, is identify them. To see a child die, these people pay 25,000 and up to €1 million. Over and over again we come across such borderline stuff that is so cruel and evil that we consider ending our research. But our conscience doesn't allow us to brush all this aside.
What do you think you could have done?
I don't know.
For example, let's say you wanted to stop them.
Then maybe I would not be here anymore.
You really could not have done anything. They were much bigger than you and much stronger than you.
At least I could have tried.
If the new statements from Deborah are confirmed as facts, and her rapist, who is in prison as we know, will soon be free. I do not know exactly when he will be free, whether in a few weeks or months, but if these facts are confirmed, then I say, danger. It's a dangerous threat. Not only for Deborah, but also for the other children who are in his immediate vicinity. So be careful, no one can later say, we did not tell you about it. Because it would have been enough to listen to the first victims. Attention, it's a dangerous threat.
I'm talking for all the kids who are going through this. So it will stop.
So people should know, so it will stop?
Yes.
What do you think these kids are going through?
Through hell.
What is hell for you?
Something that you do not experience anywhere. The worst thing they will ever experience in their lives.
Naomi is 18 years old. A young woman, trying to build a new life. A normal life. With the peculiarity that she has forgotten nothing of all the things she had to go through.
If I'm talking now, of course, to make this movie and to say something, but, above all, so people will hear it, over and over again, until they listen. So people know that it is true. That children are raped every day and die. It's happening, that's reality. I experienced it, I saw it. I have to finally talk about it. Even if it's not a nice thing to talk about, but I have to do it. So that the children do not have to experience this anymore. So that there are no more rapes, no more murder. So that people will wake up and realize the reality of it. So people won't say, that kid lied. The child is fantasizing. No. The child is telling the truth, and above all, people have to want to hear the truth.
Violence against small children. Ritual abuse, going so far as human sacrifices. What Noemi tells us in the next few days is some of the most unimaginable things people can do. Noemi is initiated by her father and other perpetrators, men from all social backgrounds, to live scenes of barbaric torture, in front of a running camera. We need time and the necessary distance to be able to process and analyze everything we are confronted with.
En fait, nous lui avons proposé de vivre quelque chose de différent, parce que l'approcher pour une interview quelques heures, en tirer...
We suggested our idea to Noemi, because just running a quick interview to get the most out of it, wasn't in our opinion necessarily an appropriate measure for such shocking statements. So he brought her to Germany. My team and me. We wanted to take the time to show her something else. So he drove to the northeast of Germany, to the Baltic Sea. We wanted to Noemi to be able to trust us, and have plenty of time to talk to her in peace. To have the opportunity to talk to her at any time, without the pressure of time. In order to talk about a past that is almost 10 years ago. And to put her mind back in the situation of those days. That was no easy matter. But I think that's exactly what we achieved in this environment. Our interviews last 4 days. Until late into the night, we try together to approach the terrible facts. Her sexual abuse starts at age 5, and when Noemi is 8 years old, she loses her virginity.
It was short and brutal. They just did it with me, and my cousin Camille. That's all. One day, my father said to me, we are driving to my cousin's. I liked going there because I liked them very much. In the house were my uncle Andre, and my cousins Camille and Marie. And then they just did it. They took off our clothes, smeared cream on our buttocks, and raped us. One after the other. My older cousin Marie was not a virgin anymore, I think.
And it was the first time for you? If I may ask.
Yes, you could say that. At the same time we had to learn, what fellatio means, and how to do that. Yes.
The father showers Noemi with love. He tells the little girl that his touching her is completely natural. She becomes enslaved to him. And eventually, he tells her his big secret. An underground basement system. Kept down there, children, imprisoned in cages. Nomi becomes her father's accomplice.
The children never lived long down there. Only as long as they were raped and tortured. And then they killed them. That's it. The kids were down there alone, never able to escape. Because they had been beaten so hard, raped so often. They were stuffed full of drugs. Or dead. My father and the other men had already raped the little girl. I came in, and was kind of jealous, because I knew that my dad had done it too. But then there was a feeling of satisfaction in my mind, probably because I was allowed to attend this ceremony. Because, of all the children who belonged to this pedophile network, that had to service the men, and were being raped by them, I was the only one who was allowed to see this. So, instead of just being used, I was allowed to become active myself. They told me to boil water to scald the child. Meanwhile they beat the child, first with a belt, then with a stick. They burned it with a cigarette, and then cut off her hair. They told me to cut off the little girl's clitoris. I didn't even know what that was. They did not really tell me the clitoris, they showed it to me and said you have to cut this off. My father told me, you have to do this now. He showed me where and how to cut, and I did it.
This isn't the first time I was confronted with such horror scenarios. Nevertheless, it still takes me time to overcome the horror of the experiences she describes. Noemi tells of about 10 child sacrifices, in just 1 year. She shows me on a map, where the entrances of the catacombs are. To this day, the existence of the underground tunnel system at St. Victor, are denied by the judiciary. I contacted Jacques Berthelot. He agrees to review Noemi's case one more time. Together, we drove to St. Victor, the village where all this happened. One more time and step by step, we wanted to go through all the evidence that was found by the investigators of the children's organization SID. The problem with Saint Victor in this case, however, is that the existence of the underground passage is completely denied by the authorities. At the time, Berthelot made a written statement to the police confirming the existence of the underground corridors. That's why we went back to Saint Victor with him to see what he had researched then. Not far from the castle, we found an entrance to an underground passage. An entrance, which is covered with a piece of sheet metal and in which there are poisonous snakes. It is an underground passage that has existed for centuries, but today is no longer accessible to us, because after about half a meter, there is a wall of stone in the corridor. A little higher, above the road in the forest, there is another entrance, which is closed up today with a concrete slab. And, according to our plan, it is in direct connection with the first entrance. Noemi speaks of another underground corridor that connects the village church directly with the Red House. It was the house where her father lived and worked as a carpenter. We went to the church, and the entrance to the corridor, as described by the children, below the altar, is closed off with concrete. You can clearly see that this must have just happened recently. I have been to Saint Victor several times. There are underground passages there. I had the opportunity to take pictures at that time. I gave these photos into the hands of the deputy head of police, Mr. Moher, no sorry, Marin. He was supposed to put it to the file with the minutes of my hearing. The hearing I made with the police in April of 1990. But the file disappeared all of a sudden. Neither the photos nor the minutes of my hearing can be found. Why does the same thing happen over and over again? Why are the alleged perpetrators not being held responsible? Years of research lead me again and again to this one explanation. Many of the perpetrators are high-ranking personalities, have the power to protect each other. And it's a lot of money in the game. Noemi reports about children being raped, tortured and sacrificed in front of a camera. These so-called snuff videos cost up to €20,000.
I came in, the curtains were drawn closed, it was dark. There were carpets on the floor. They told me to sit down, and I sat down. There was a table where the priests stood. They were dressed in long dark red robes, almost black. They circled around the table and sang. It took quite a while. There was something wrapped in a cloth that was the same color as their robes. It was brought to the table. It was a child. My grandfather carried it in his arms. My brother Pierre was standing next to him. My grandfather Maurice then showed my brother how to kill the child. My brother killed it, the child of course, screamed. They said a few more prayers and then we had to go out. After about a 3/4 to an hour, I do not remember exactly how long, they came out. The ceremonies were almost always done the same. Then there was a meal on the terrace. There would be 2 big plates filled with meat. Today I know, it was human meat.
You think you ate human meat?
Yes, of course, I'm sure of it. It was part of being initiated into this sect. You become a member without being aware of it. You had to attend some black masses and follow certain rituals. I didn't really understand all of it at the time. Today, with distance, I think, the things I had to do with the other children, like cutting off parts of their genitals, was also part of these rituals. Because, that is not normally part of the usual snuff movies. It was more or less a consecration to become a member of this sect.
Das gehört normalerweise nicht zu den üblichen Snuff-Movies dazu. Es war eben mehr oder weniger eine Weihe, um Mitglied dieser Sekte zu werden.
La seule initiation que ça pouvait être, c'était à la secte, indépendamment d'elle, mais pourtant.
The rituals amount to nothing other than cannibalism.
Yes.
Oui.
Ja.
Numi is neither absent nor confused in our interviews. Rather cool and clear. If she does not remember something, then she admits it, and if she errs, corrects them immediately. How could Numi deal with it all? Is her story believable? We travel with her to Berlin and talk to the psychologist Ariane Ahinger.
When we hear what Numi tells about these horrible things in the basement, we picture it in our mind and we have to push these pictures away very quickly, because we cannot stand it. That's how it was for me anyway, when I heard what was done to these children in the basement. Now, this is how we feel just hearing about it, but Numi had to experience that as a kid, so we can get an idea for what she had to do with her feelings. Basically, she had to completely push her feelings aside, and she had already learned to do that through the sexual abuse that began at 5 years old. So, she practically sent the robot to this basement, and the child stayed at home. And there, she, the robot, performed the orders given to her by the father. And at the same time, she was a part of this secret, and also, had this special position with her father. Of course she was also very dependent on him. She only had the father. Other than that, she was completely isolated. She didn't have good contact with the mother because she was estranged from the mother. And apart from that, she was very withdrawn anyway.
After the conversation with the psychologist Ahinger, it becomes even more clear to me how the father actually programmed her as a little girl. Noemi endures the worst of it, because she disassociates or splits into two personalities. A robot, that robotically executes its father's orders. And the little girl, who plays at home with her dolls.
There are a couple of factors that come together, where I say, she is absolutely believable. One is that she is now 18 years old, and repeats in detail the same thing she said when she was 11 years old. That's one point. The other point is that she really describes things in detail and never contradicts them. Meaning, she doesn't represent things differently than how she already portrayed them. Then, another important point is that I experience her the way I've already experienced other traumatized people. That being, the big distance with which she talks about the things she had to experience. It may sound paradoxical, but that's exactly the reason it's a sign of credibility for me. And she doesn't embellish it. She doesn't try to appear as a victim. She even says, she doesn't want anything to do with being a victim anymore. She appears absolutely authentic, considering her background, and considering that she has to maintain this distance because otherwise she would collapse. Well, I have no doubt at all about her story.
Dass sie diese Distanz aufrechterhalten muss, weil sie sonst zusammenbrechen würde. Also ich habe überhaupt keine Zweifel daran.
The judiciary has dropped Numi's case, even though her credibility is confirmed in several instances. Why is it that no one wants to deal with these facts, that even go beyond the borders of France?
We drove to Tourneau, to a couple. There, my father introduced me to Marc Dutroux. He told me, "This is Marc, a friend of mine." I had to greet him with a kiss, and then I went away. The conversation between the two men did not interest me. At that time, as a child, I didn't care what grown-ups talked about with each other. So, I greeted him and then went to play. When the two of them were done, we left again. And, after a few months, we went back there again. My dad and Marc Dutroux talked, and I went to play again.
Marc Dutroux, also known as the Monster of Charleroi, the child abuser, is charged with kidnapping 6 girls. 4 died, 2 survived the sadistic captivity. All of us know the Dutroux case. It was the biggest topic of conversation in Europe at the time. Today Marc Dutroux is the only one in prison, and it seems that this case should remain a purely Belgian case. But with all that Numi tells us, and when her testimony is confirmed, we would have a French connection to the Dutroux case. Because Numi was living in the Ardèche Valley when she became the victim of the violence she describes to us today. And Numi says that in 1995 she met Marc Dutroux there twice with her dad. This aspect has not yet been considered in the police investigation. But if it were to be considered, then Dutroux's appearance in France would open up a whole new chapter, a European chapter, in pedophilia.
Actually, I should have to testify in the trial against Marc Dutroux. Not because of rape or all these other things, but just to show the connection between Marc Dutroux and France. I am describing exactly what Marc Dutroux did in Belgium. And I saw him in France. My story therefore, is proof that there is very well a European pedophile network. That pedophiles have organized a network in order to kill children, produce cassettes, and rape children. These are not just any amateurs recording video films. Or some crazy people who kidnap and kill children to satisfy their personal sexual needs. No. It is a professionally managed network. With a large pedophile market, a supply of cassettes, pedophile photos, and snuff movies. And my dad, and Marc Dutroux are also part of this network.
Und mein Vater und Marc Dutroux gehören auch zu diesem Netz.
When Numi is 10 years old, the martyrium ends for her. To this day she lives hidden away, in a place in southern Europe that is only known to us. She is now of age, and she is determined to finally take the initiative herself. Numi will file a complaint against all of the perpetrators she's familiar with, because of sexual abuse, rape, and murder.
I will not ask the whole world to believe me. Everyone can believe what they want. I know that I am telling the truth. Period. I do not need the assurance that everyone believes me to know that I'm telling the truth. No. I know the weight and meaning of my statement. It's the truth. Whether people believe me or not, it's their problem. I only know that it concerns many people. Every child can be kidnapped and raped. It happens every day. Many may not believe me because it's too incredible, because it's too terrible, I don't know. Let them think what they want. All I know, is that children are being tortured and killed every day. By reporting what happened to me, I take responsibility. Towards society, and towards the children.